I want to run through a few of your notable parts. You're on the set of American Gangster, and you forget your line, and you put your hand on Denzel's shoulder.
Oh, yeah. Denzel and I, by the way, get along very well now. I saw him, anyway. Yeah, we almost got into a fight. There was a moment where, Brian Grazer was going around with his hair standing straight up, and I had done some scenes with
I
Russell.
love Brian, by the way.
Brian's the best,
yeah.
man. And he was like, Josh and Russell are amazing. Josh and Russell are amazing. I'm sure Denzel got wind of that. When I would see Denzel, I don't know, in character, I don't know. I'm just here. I'm like, I can't even believe that I'm here with this cast. Like some of my favorite actors. Insider's one of my favorite all-time movies. So I get through moments with Russell and then Denzel. And Denzel showed up, he was a little late to set, and there was a whole thing there. And then he showed me the lines and he said, he didn't change any of my lines, but he kind of changed the structure of it. He said, I think I'm gonna put this down here and I'll put that up there, but he wouldn't really look at me. And then, so I was trying to remember the structure. And then we rehearsed, it wasn't that many lines, mostly mine. And I'm supposed to be super confident. It's Denzel Washington, man. It's like not easy. You're just this actor who they're trying out, seeing if he's the real thing or not. And I forgot a line. And I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, what's the line? And he hit my hand off. And he said, don't ever put your hand on me. And I was like, holy shit, I'm gonna scrap with Denzel Washington. This is crazy. We're not actors anymore. We're not, at least in my mind. In his mind, he was just doing his job. He was that guy. He was Frank Lucas, period. But I didn't know. Whoa. And then we got through that moment. I said, are you okay? I said, yeah, you? I said, yeah. Can I get my line? I said, go for it. It's like he'd said what he needed to say. And then I saw him like maybe a year later at something, and he saw me and he goes, Josh. I was like, oh. I've heard that story now. Not that particular story. I've heard that story about Robert Duvall, who I've known for a long time, and it's this. I've heard that story on set from a lot of different actors now.
And yet for you, between action and cut is not your favorite time.
It hasn't been, but there's something recently that I did. I just did Knives Out with Rian Johnson and Daniel Craig and all these people that I really, Andrew Scott and Kerry Washington and people who I really look up to a lot. Glenn Close again, who I adore. And it was a really good opportunity to kind of sink into a role. I mean, it's supremely written, this priest, and it's yeah. So I was like, I want to do this because I want to go further with it. I feel, again, after 40 years, I still have that mentality where I'll take out an acting book and start reading through it and saying, it's like a F1 racer going back to kart racing and saying, what's the S, where's the nectar? Where's the nectar again? And I think with that movie, it was, yeah, I actually had some positive experience between action and cut.
Paul Haggis and Crash.
Oh yeah, that was really fun. I loved working with Paul on that. What a dandy. No, I didn't end up doing that. I write about it, and it was, listen, man, again, the perspective later on is, I get it now. Producing, directing, acting, being on all sides of it now. But I thought it was a little crude. I'm doing a play. I'm doing Exonerated on Bleecker Street, and I'm talking to him on the phone before I go in and do the play, and he was like, I was the first person to read Crash, and he was like, yeah, I can't use you in Crash because you have no value, like none. And so, hey, do you think Diane would be interested? Can you get her the script? I mean, it all came in the same sentence, and I was like, I felt that big. And I went in and I did, I was doing what I was doing, which is part of, this profession in this day and age, when you see people come up, when you experience people come up and say, I want to be an actor, 9 times out of 10, they want to know how to be famous. Whereas back in the day, it was about paying your dues and about the kind of work that you were doing and what you were reading, and if you were getting people together in weekends and reading through just random plays in the weekends, and you just wanted to get further into it. It's less and less do you find actors who just want to like get in the soup, get in the cauldron together and just...
What?
I don't know. I think just social media. I think this idea of a perception that I said in the beginning, which is celebrities do one thing. They walk down a perpetual red carpet and they wave at people, and people clap for them. When the truth of the matter is like even mentioning Denzel, and I look back at the work that Denzel's done, and I'm absolutely flabbergasted. When he has that tear come down in Glory, or when he's, you know, Cry Freedom is another great, there's just so many great movies that I look at him, and I'm just in awe, in absolute awe. How do you do that? See Daniel Day-Lewis, how do you do that? That's a different version of it though. When you're transported by story, truly transported, I don't have to live in this reality at all times. And there's other realities that I can live in that are going to mirror my reality and give me a different perspective. That's interesting to me. That's better than taking LSD to me. Because that's my only goal, is to find out how I can be perpetually tripping and not have to deal with jail.
No Country for Old Men. How you got the audition and then Quentin Tarantino all of a sudden directing you?
Yeah, man, I auditioned for it. Sam Shepard told me about the book, and I went out the next day and I bought the book in Austin, Texas, and I read the book in a day.
And your agents say you have no shot at
They don't even say no shot. They wouldn't dare say that. You know what I mean? They just say, oh yeah, there's that. And I go, great, so can we audition for it? And they're like, yeah, put yourself on tape. I mean, that's the best you can do. There's no interest though. There's no pre-interest.
Right.
So I asked Robert, who was always carrying around kind of like a camcorder. I said, would you do me a favor? I'll do this with Marley Shelton, and who I was working with at the time, and can you just film it? He said, why don't we just use the camera that we have, Genesis camera, $1 million camera. And then Quentin got word of it, and he was there, and he started directing me. Why don't you say it this way? Why don't you say it that way? Whatever. But it was a super, I mean, I've told the story a million times, but it was a super well done audition. Back when you didn't do that, by the way, you didn't send in auditions. Like, you were there in person or you weren't there. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so when the Coens got it, their response was, who lit it? And they'll say that, they'll tell you the story. I mean, they had no interest in the actor. And I've seen that audition recently, and I was like, that's not that far from what I did. So what were they not seeing? But they needed to experience me in the room. And my agent got Ethan's number and begged him to take their last audition, and they were focused on somebody else, who I saw in the hallway as I had my head down and just focused on the 6 scenes that I had gotten hours before. And I went in to audition for them, and I ended up getting it that day. And then 2 weeks later, I hit a car, my motorcycle, and I snapped my collarbone.
And how do you convince your
You
doctor
lie.
to lie
You
for
intimidate.
you? So, take me into that conversation and what was discussed.
I just said, it wasn't even an intimidation. He said, look, I said, Ethan wants to talk to you. Like, what do you think you're going to tell him? It was like, well, you know, that it was a clean break and that you'll probably heal, and it'll take about a 3-month heal, but you'll be, you know, whatever, he said. And I said, yeah. I don't think we can quite say it like that. I think we need to kind of get more into, like, it's maybe a hairline fracture or something. I don't know what he ended up saying, but...
And he was on board.
He was on board. I don't want to get anybody in trouble. He wasn't untruthful. He just left out some things.
But he understood how big of a deal this was for you.
Yeah,
and didn't
and
want
really
to
the
screw that
only
up.
reason, like I've said this, but the only reason is Llewellyn gets shot in the right shoulder, and it's the only reason why it works, because you can tell that something's going on. You can tell when I'm shooting the antelope that I'm picking up the thing like this, and I'm holding my collarbone in place, because it was a clean break. It was still moving. And then when it started to calcify and all that, you know, I couldn't do the jump, which Mark Norby ended up doing. There was a jump when I'm running toward the river. Llewellyn's running toward the river, and I didn't get shot or something, but no, he doesn't get shot, but he somersaults down the side of the hill. And we were waiting for me to do that till the end because my collarbone had to heal well enough to be able to do that.
What got to you more with W, the Bell's palsy, or the fact that his kind of lingo ended up permeating, you know, everyday life for you for a long period of time?
What, whose lingo?
Bush's.
The America thing?
Yeah.
I mean,
Can you do that once more?
no. At some point. I was so terrified of that. You know, I probably shouldn't say this, but Sebastian Stan just did Trump. And it looks pretty good, you know? And he called me at some point, and he was like, what do you think of this? Because it's so in the consciousness of every day that's what was going on with Bush at that time, with W. He was on CNN every 5 minutes.
Right.
So it was like, do we need to be worried and this and that? And it wasn't a hammering. It was more of a, which I kind of brought up to Oliver, because there was one script that was really hammering, an early script. And I was like, this is not interesting to me, because you watch CNN and you get this same thing. Like, why don't we like get into who he was and how did this happen? Not even that it was wrong. It's just we have the feelings that we have about it looking back on it. But how did the guy was the total misfit when they were focused on the other son, and this guy became president of the United States? So that was interesting to me. But I was terrified doing it, because I'm like, am I going to get shot? Am I going to get this? Am I going to do some crazy whatever? And just doing it well, like staying in character, and so I stayed in character pretty much the whole time. I didn't go out once. And then when I finally did go out at the end of the thing, I went to jail. I mean, what the I just can't. It was like, you know, I can't just go out and have a good time. I have to go to jail.